guys. So this is the second part of this Powers cover. This is for one of the collections, I think for book 5 of one of the definitive collections. So at the beginning of this, I had already drawn this sketch or several sketches digitally, and then this is the one that was approved. And the earlier sketch, I began the process of inking. So you can check that out to see these first steps. I am going to probably repeat myself a lot if you've seen some of these videos, but I guess the point is every piece, every cover, everything that I'm inking or drawing will have a slightly different vibe to it. So even if I am repeating myself, it's going to be under a different context depending on the piece. So hopefully you guys are getting some useful information out of this stuff. Uh-oh. Oh no. Okay. There's a weird drag there for a second, and I thought I had just restarted my computer. Why is it dragging like that? I'm going to start over again, but I don't. Okay. What to say? I don't know. I'm tired. Yeah, I'm a little tired, so it's going to take me a minute, my brain to get going and be able to talk to you about what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So doing these inner shadows, so he's lit with the light coming from the sides of him. So the outer line is going to be mostly white, as you can see. Stabilization is turned way too up. I like the stabilizer. I've said it several times that one of the reasons is it makes you get like a cleaner tip to the line for some reason. I don't know exactly how or why, but it affects the line quality. But I also don't like to have it up so much that it kind of controls the line for me, or that there is this naturalization to the stabilizer on Clip Studio to sort of round out your shapes and your lines, and sometimes I need them to be toothier. So I find somewhere like around 20 or less is pretty good to give me that tip, but also to not take away the edge from my ink lines. Boy, I'm suddenly forgetting what Millennium's costume looks like. Well, that's what the internet's for, right? I spelled that all wrong. Who cares? Let's see if we can find anything. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay, so he's got like a... I'm not sure if it's showing up there. There you go. That's his costume. So I have a secondary monitor over here, which is a big help for using reference and stuff. Bums me out a little bit that I used to... Is that looking weird? I used to keep all my reference and stuff in books and whatnot next to me. And there's, I mean, I think we're all, at least, I don't know about younger people, but us older folk, we're starting to feel this, what do you call it? It's like a separation from, we need the tactile thing. I've been really enjoying using everything digitally, but whether it's reading or looking at my reference or whatever, I'm definitely finding that pulling out the books like I used to and having them next to me is just a lot more relatable. I mean, I can kind of feel it more than when I'm looking at stuff digitally. There is a difference. It's hard to explain. But I talk about this a lot during these videos. Like I have the same thing with the quality of the ink lines here with a digital pen versus brush. The big difference and the kind of winner here, the reason why I go digital so much anymore is just the time. It's just so much faster. Even if I'm drawing something really simple, uh, doing things digitally just takes so much more of the time-consuming micro steps out of the equation. There's no scanning or rescanning. If I need to fix something, I can just do it right there. I don't need import stuff well, actually I do import stuff, but you know what I mean. It's just so much faster. So often the speed dictates how I'm going to go about doing something because I'm all about the deadlines and getting the work done. I never want to hack anything out, but there's like a dance. You got to figure out like, well, what's the perfect in between place between getting your work done efficiently and getting it done as well as you want to take care of it. My mind is not my mind is not working yet. It's still too early. I need more coffee. It's actually not that early. I just haven't been functioning much yet today. So okay, so outline this with like a really nice layout line. Okay, I'll combine those. So basically what I did was I drew the circle with the template tool up here on another layer so that I can move it around some, and then I just dropped it down into the ink layer. So this is where it was before, it was on another layer on its own. And just do it there so that I can move it, and then Control E, drop it down into there. Let's finish up some of these highlights, and then I'll fill in some black so we can kind of see where we are. How is this looking? Ooh. Okay. So this whole area in here, I realized, I think in my mind I was thinking it was a dark shape or a color, a solid black in here, but obviously it wasn't. Well, I'm actually really glad I'm recording now, despite not being fully sort of awake, because a lot of you guys out there, I know you've got 9-to-5 jobs, or you've got families, little kids, stuff that, sometimes you just have to work with what circumstances you have, which is just being exhausted, being really tired. And I'm not exactly exhausted right now, but even professionals, even full-time working guys such as myself, you got to push through. You got to push through being tired or not feeling like working. So I'm glad you can see me struggle a little. In fact, those are the videos I like the most, or I think the most successful, is when something goes wrong and I can show you guys how to deal with it or not deal with it. It's a real shame. I was recording some, so I'm going to do these highlights on another layer here. That way I can move them around, or I don't have to worry about being inside the lines like that. Another way of going about it, but it's an extra step, I think, is selecting the select tool. Oops, I'm going to make sure that, and then you can just kind of draw it in there, but without going over the lines, But I like to just create another layer for some reason. That's just what I'm doing. But yeah, some of the best videos, I think, are when things fail. Unfortunately, I had this really, really good video of me failing, but the sound was messed up, so I couldn't show the whole process. And the reason why this particular fail was good was because I found my way out of it. Like, I was able to show how I could deal with the mistakes that I had made, which I think were something to do with drawing on the wrong layer and flattening it or something. I forget exactly what happened. But I'm sure I'll screw up again. Happens plenty of times. I'm not so sure how I feel about this center shape, how that's coming out. I'm going to leave it for now. I'll worry about it a little bit later. Alright, so let's get up here into this hand. As you can see, I luckily between the style that I draw in, hold on. Yeah, I'm going to lower that now. Control E. The style that I draw in is simple, but that often means with less lines or less shapes, I have to make them a little bit, not perfect, because I don't like perfection at all. I think that ruins things. But have less lines to cover up mistakes or bad drawing. But because there are less lines and less shapes, I can also draw a pencil with a lot less detail, and my mind already knows how to fill it in. This is also feeling weird because I started this cover like 3 or 4 days ago, and then I left it here just because stuff came up, right? So now it feels kind of weird popping back into it in the middle of the process. Yeah, I'm thinking his eyes here are looking more like they're closed, and these are the eyelids that we're seeing than it is like, I was a little worried before that I couldn't tell if this is supposed to be like white pupils showing through or what. But I think these little teeny tiny indicator lines here, we can get away with indicating that his eyes are just shut. I'm looking down on his head, so I kind of drew his ears here, kind of like they would just be straightforward shot. So I think I need to give him a little bit more the top of the ear. Let's see if this will get any more convincing. Ugh, feeling awkward today, man. So I'm filling this in here just to give it some more weight and to show some shadow. And again, I'm always trying to go, even here around the ears, white, black, white, black. You know, that constant checkerboard shape or checkerboard pattern is a really good way to keep the contrast in your line work and shape. I keep shaking my head because I feel like all the words coming out of my mouth are just kind of gobbledygook, but hopefully this will come together, my words, as we go by. Oh geez, I was in such a huge brush. That's why some of that felt weird. I'm going to bump the stabilization way up and on here because I want a really sharp line for some of these muscles. I think that's his figure. All done. I'm not sure. There's something about it. It's just not. It's not set my world on fire. But instead of torturing myself over, I'm going to keep moving. And I feel like when the other elements are here, then I can really kind of figure out, well, what is it about it that I'm not liking? And hopefully I'll figure it out. If not, I might take the time to just redo the whole thing. We'll see. Hopefully it won't come to that. I'm going to create another layer to do these figures. Good old Dina. And I'm, paying attention to the crop marks over here. This is where it absolutely gets cut off. This is where they want all the live artwork to stay inside of here. I also have to keep in mind there's usually some words and type that go along the bottom, or there can be. Obviously, all the shape up here is going to be the logo and dressing and stuff. But I'm going to draw her on a separate layer, and that's also going to allow me to judge whether or not I want to keep her head behind him, or maybe move her down some. We'll see. We'll see what I want to do. Actually, I'm going to pull up over here the powers definitive collection. Yeah, I want to look at the trade dressing here. And we're doing these at DC now, and I think they're slightly different, but we'll probably keep the same kind of dressing. In fact, I know somewhere in here I've got versions of what we did. I should double check with that. All right, I'm going to check with that in a little bit. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and just start working on Dina's character here. Smooth that stabilization way down. Keep it at a smaller brush, like a 20 or 30. We'll do 30 for the outlines. Again, Dina is not drawn in great detail here. The main reason for that is because I've been inking my own work for, 30 years or so. So I have a real feel for my layouts and how to translate them directly into pencil. And I could get in even way closer here. I generally don't like to because I can get way too detailed. So mentally right now, since I've zoomed in for you guys, I'm thinking I want to keep this extra, extra simple. So I'm going to make sure all the line work here is very simple. Because if I got too detailed in here, once I pull back, all these little lines are going to show up and be really weird looking. I'm going to be honest with you, I hate everything I'm doing right now. That feels a little bit better. Just make sure her forearm has enough sort of weight to it, meat. Even though we might not see this area, I want to be able to sure that it's drawn in correct proportion. Otherwise, this hand is going to come out kind of weird looking compared to the shoulder, even if it's cut off here. And there's something about it I don't like. Luckily, again, with this back button programmed into the pen, it's so easy to just try out a couple lines and then fix. Kind of judge as you go along. Alright, this looks pretty good. This is okay. And again, kind of apologizing because, like I said, I'm just not firing on all cylinders this morning, as they say. Dina's 1992 ear cuffs. I don't know, I like ear cuffs. I don't know why. I'm not sure how much of a fashion faux pas that is anymore. You know, I don't know if it's really out of style or if it's retro or timeless or whatever. I have no idea. Which reminds me, it is important to keep track of that stuff as you get older, of, you know, what people are wearing, what they're not wearing. Um, you know, because whatever your personal style is, you're still drawing for the public, and chances are a lot of that public is going to be much more in touch with things than you are. That doesn't mean you have to have an appreciation for it or, you know, subscribe to these new fashion ideas or whatever. And you know, you need to have like the most modern stuff. You just need to kind of know generally what's going on out there. And I remember that hitting me actually really early in my career. I did some work for MTV for an animated show, and I think it was 1991 or two. Um, and it was the first time that I realized that I was completely out of touch with my generation. I was still kind of drawing people dressed in like leather jackets and torn jeans and stuff. But already at that point, all that sort of 80s metal thing had been over, but I'd been sequestered in my studio just drawing and not hanging out with people my age or anything. So I saw this other set of designs that came in, and it was all like the knit caps and baggy pants and like, you know, colorful clothes, like completely everything that I had been missing because, you know, I was a shut-in. And yeah, that was sort of my first lesson on that. It's like, oh shit, yeah, I can't completely live in my own world. My hair's a little big. Can't completely live in my own world. I've got to pay attention. And you can go too far with that. You don't need to know everything. You need to drive yourself nuts. I had a friend of mine who would listen to all the newest music, like on pop stations and stuff, and just some horrible, horrible shit. But he wanted to, you know, stay in touch with what was going on out there, even if it was music he didn't like. And I really appreciate that. That was very, that's some dedication. I couldn't do that. All right, so here's Dina, or at least just her basic outline. I don't need to do all of her details yet. Now, because I drew her on another layer, I can move it around some. I think I'm going to keep her there, not have her cut off by things. But damn it, now I'm really having second thoughts about the space down here. If it's going to get cut off by credits and stuff like that, or if it's going to be problematic for the designers. Well, again, this is digital, so it's easy to change and move things around. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as is. And when I get to trade dressing in later, I'll be sure to save it so that any future covers I do, I am 100% sure about the cropping. Well, not the cropping because that's here, but as far as like make sure that I'm being true to the space that needs to be saved for credits and the logo and all that stuff. Oh, everything feels like mush coming out of my mouth. But again, no matter how tired you are sometimes or not into the work, sometimes you just got to do it. I grab too much around her, and I don't want to. I want to preserve these pencils layer here for layers, so I don't want to accidentally grab Walker's shape and pull too much of him out. So that way, when I show the pencils to you later, it looks complete, doesn't look all messed up. All right, still gonna draw or ink. Pardon me. To ink Retro Girl on her own layer. Okay, I'm gonna do her goggles first, so I'm turning the stabilization way up because that will help me by hand draw her goggles organically. That's the outer lip of the goggles. Inner. Nice and simple. All right, I'm going to turn this opacity or the stabilization way back down. Somewhere around 20 keeps me with a nice line still. Going with a sort of pouty lipped Retro Girl. It's funny, when I'm drawing these characters, I can still either see or hear the voices of the actors who played them on the TV show, on Power's show. And Callista, being played by Elisa Rulin, I'm saying that correct, was amazing. She really embodied that character. Pretty much all of our actors just kicked ass in their roles. They really made them theirs. And that was some of the best parts of working on Powers. Was the cast was just great. I mean, making friends with them, certain members of the cast, was almost more valuable than the show in the end, to be honest. I like the show. We just had problems with the special effects for some reason. It had a big budget, but I don't know what happened visually. That just could not come together. But I was really happy with the acting, with the casting, the writing. Everything else was great. Just couldn't. Sorry, she has gloves. I just couldn't pull together those visuals. And the whole thing was experimental, being on PlayStation. Yeah. Still holding out that maybe we'll get to visit again someday on television form. I don't know how. Just saying. I'd like that. And it's not impossible just because somehow Powers has had more lives than, I don't know. Seems like there's been multiple times during the Powers run whether the show was going to happen or not happen, whether the comic had kind of run its course or not, whether we started over again, how many times we wrote characters into positions where it kind of felt like, well, clearly this is the end. And yet we still have a lot of life to it. Still have a lot to say with Powers. It's a kind of story that can change the storytelling changes with the times. It grows with it. The times almost sort of tells the story itself. I mean, obviously, right now we're focusing on United States versus Murder Incorporated, but yeah, Powers is still alive. I'm really looking forward to our 20th year. We'll have to make some plans to do something special for that. Because I kind of sketched out her character down here on this layer down here. Obviously, I didn't finish her out, so I'm trying to figure out what her body shape is actually doing down here. So we got her torso, breasts here. Her back looks like it's probably actually pretty straight, like this. Her spine. So I think she's really leaning forward. And she still has her cape. And most of our costume you actually can't see here from this pose, but that's okay. All right, so back to the ink line. The light source is kind of coming from around here in general. So it's going to be thin to thick, thin to thick. There's her belt. Boy, I should have looked at her costume before I started drawing. It's been a little while, so kind of forgot some of the details. Most of this down here is being cut off. But that's it. I just needed her basic shape. Alright, I like this. Right, one thing I forget to do sometimes is, so this is my layer for the template. So usually what I do is I create a layer on top of that with pure white. Oops. That way when I'm inking and stuff, I'm not distracted by the crop marks. Sometimes I'll just drop this opacity just a tiny bit so I can see through it. Brain. Where's my brain? Okay, I got to do her highlights and shadows and stuff. All right, so I'm looking at Walker here. I'm going to lower Walker's opacity. The lighting, like I said, generally is going to be coming from up here, so she's flesh colored here. I think she's supposed to have arm bracelets. I don't remember, but it's also fine, I think. I don't need the costumes to be so exact every time. So I'm going to risk putting this armband here, which I'm not sure goes there or not. But it feels right now. All right, so do highlights. Trying to figure out if this leg would be all black. I'll put a little highlight there. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to lay down the shadows here. I might as well fill in her whole arm. That line is really thick, isn't it? I'm going to leave it though, at least for now, because like I think most of it gets covered up by there. We'll see. Some more highlights here. That's right, she has gloveless fingers, so that's always fun to draw. Some shadow from her goggles. I'm kind of tempted to put a shadow here on her face. I'll do that last, we'll see. A little bit of highlights. I don't do too much of this kind of rendering anymore. Definitely not Murder Ink. Murder Ink is almost no rendering. It's almost just all solid shapes. Powers has a long tradition where I did a lot of sort of feathering and stuff, which I think is still useful, but I don't do it as much as I used to. Now I use it to really just kind of punctuate certain shapes, or if there's like a big action thing, like somebody's punching somebody or something like that, or then I'll really bring out all the rendering details. I think those feel like energy, if that makes any sense. So doing something really still feeling, it doesn't, for me, this rendering doesn't work so much on something that's supposed to be still, which is probably why in Murder Ink there's so much of it. So much, I mean, such a lack of it that Murder Ink is mostly just solid shapes. This is one of my favorite things right here, is just filling in blacks. Oops. One of the things I really like about filling in black shapes too is finding stuff. So sometimes I'll just drop something in here or here. What would this arm? This arm might actually look really cool if it was totally in silhouette, you know, and I would do, crap. I just realized I've been filling in stuff on the wrong layer. One of the things I love about clip art is you can go back steps even further than you can in Photoshop. And again, with my pen programmed here, I just keep clicking away. That looks like I got everything. Okay. So make sure I'm on the right layer right now. Now I'm going to fill in the black. Is that everything? Yeah. Like I said, like trying stuff out, like I would have to get rid of the black in her bra area, brain, in her breast and the torso. I'd have to get these black out to drop this black and make her arm a silhouette, which I think would look really cool actually. And a good way to test that out is you create another layer, lower the opacity on your ink layer, and then on this top layer, fill in a black there, and I can kind of see it. That would look really pretty cool. But what's next? Walker. Yeah, that might just be too much shadow. You know, and also this is for cover, so I'm thinking I want to keep things a little lighter, like it's not total noir, especially because it's all superheroes on this cover. Dina's hair looks horrible. All right, what's wrong? Here's a way to test it. Rotate the canvas. Usually I can tell better by just stepping away from it for a while. Yeah, she looks like she got like a little boy haircut. There's something going on in here, so I'm going to play with this area for a little bit to see if this might help. Now it feels like it's all in here. I don't know what it is. There's something I'm not liking. Sometimes it's hard to figure out. Sometimes you look at something and it's just a bad feeling. All right, that feels a lot better. Look at that. That feels right. Okay. Kind of feel like I want to make Retro Girl's head a little bit bigger. Also, this goggle was kind of funky. I can't tell if it's funky or if it's just because I'm drawing it kind of abstract. Um, that shape pulls a lot of energy with it, you know, like it feels like it's moving. At least to me it does. So maybe what it is I need to shave off a little down here. Let's turn the stability way up, make it a much smaller brush. I'm betting that feels better. Looks better. I think so. All right. Let's see where we are. Pop the inks up here. Oops. Let's see where my crop marks are. I'm thinking maybe Retro Girl needs. I can't tell. I think Retro Girl's okay. It feels like Dina needs to be slightly bigger. What I'm being careful of is this is almost a tangent, even though these lines aren't touching each other. This space in here can get to be like a tangent where it feels like the eye is being pulled here onto there or up here. But it's not really right on, so I feel comfortable with it. And even though it's dragging my eye there, in the way that works, you know, the sometimes you want to use a tangent or shapes that are tangent-like to draw the eye purposefully in a positive way instead of like in a bad way, you know. And I think it's working pretty well there. But I do have to flesh out the rest of Dina. So go back down to the pencils, pencil line here. I'll throw in her badge. You know, she's going to be using her powers. This arc has a lot of characters. Like everybody who has powers or has ever had powers in this series seems to be using it in this story arc. There's a lot of drag on a pen here because I didn't switch out my penciling pen, and I've got my stabilization turned all the way up in there, so it drags some. Just quickly look at some shadows. She's going to have like energy coming out of her hands, so a lot of the lighting here is going to be from this area, so dark here. I'm just blocking out black shapes for what will be my shadows. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit because that just looks heavy. All right, back to my ink layer. Now I'm going to lay in these shadows. Stabilization is low, making sure my brush is small enough. I'm going to end up doing a little bit of rendering on here because she's using her powers, so again, I wanted things to like pop. I'm going to change the line weight here because I've got it, well, yeah, I'm going to change the line weights here. So right now I've got this lit as if the light is coming from over here because it's darker in the center, so let's do this. So it should, oops, that's the eraser. So it should, from here go thin to thick. And this will just show that the light, ooh, that's so thick. Oh, I'm so not ready for life right now. Yeah, I don't know. That kind of looks worse than before. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the way it originally was. All right. This is this morning's episode of Struggling with Comics with Mike Oeming. But again, this is good for you guys, right? I'm hoping. I want to say that it's not always easy. Sometimes you just don't feel like working and you got to plow through it. Sometimes you're making mistakes the whole way through, but you got to get through it. You guys who are more perfectionists, who draw a little more realistically, or actually there's plenty of cartoony guys that are perfectionists as well, and really take their time on stuff. I really admire you guys. I'm, like I said, I'm all about that balance between doing the work that I'm happy that I love and delivering my work on a timely basis, especially with Powers. Like, you know, we've been cursed on our schedules since early on. One of the problems has always been, started with me for sure, where Powers opened up a lot of doors, and I ended up, you know, actually it should be black. I ended up using the Power success to do other stuff that I'd been hungry to do, whether it was creator-owned stuff or other companies' work. And then what ended up happening was I would then fall behind on Powers. Then Brian would go, all right, well, Mike's busy. He's doing these other things, and he's going to respect that because, you know, we're pals, and he wants to see me, you know, do well, especially outside of Powers, because I need, you know, be able to show making it on my own and all that stuff. Then by the time I was ready to get back to Powers, now Brian would be typically wrapped up in something else, so that my time off of Powers would then take his attention off of Powers, and then I'm back onto Powers, and now he's busy with other stuff. And that kind of pattern just kept going for years. So luckily now, this last, and then the Power show happened, and the show even threw us off even way more, which is unfortunate. That would have been really the best time to make sure everything was monthly, but you kind of screwed it up. But that was understandable too. I mean, Powers was a full-time job for Brian, kind of secondary part-time job for me. The show, it just took up a lot of time. Anyway, so when we came to DC, we decided, let's just make sure there's no problems and let's just go right into trades, at least for this first story. We'll see what happens after. All right, I think this is looking pretty good, right? This is pretty decent. So I'm going to lower the opacity on here so that I can get rid of this part of the inks on Retro Girl. And then I think I can drop these two together. Right now I flattened it all to one layer because I'm pretty happy with this. There's probably some tweaks that I will do to it as we go along. One of the things I didn't figure out was really what Dina's powers were going to look like here. I think I want to go with this sort of lightning kind of vibe. And then I'm going to grab the pen. I'm going to lower the opacity way down. I'm going to use a really thin pen on this. Too thin. Let's try 10. Why is that? Oh, I'm using the wrong pen. I use my inking pen. Keep it small. There we go. You know, because we've got this lightning pattern going on. I try to think about really what the shape is going to be, um, to be aware that even though it's just a little special effect, it definitely helps to guide the eye or to dictate, you know, where people are going to be looking. So even though it's just a bunch of squiggly lines, I need to make sure that they're kind of coming out from Dina. You know, they're radiating from this central point. This is one of the kind of effects that I miss doing on paper. There was something about drawing this kind of line work with a pen, specifically like a ballpoint pen, just the way it would sort of dig into the paper. All right, so it doesn't look like it's just laid out on top of her or next to her. I'm going to make sure that the effect of her lightning overlaps here with her body, so it feels like it's interacting with her. There we go. That's looking all right. Um, a lot of times I like to do is sort of like double layer to these things. So like to have this, yeah, it gives it just a little more energy, a little more pop to it. And this was really fun to do with a ballpoint pen for some reason. Normally I don't use line weights this thin, but because this is like the effect, this is a, it's not a figure, it's not a solid object, so I get to break the rules a little bit, my rules. Remember what I said about detail, getting in too close. Here it kind of works again because that'll be the actual effect, as this sort of weird double thin line thing. This doesn't work for every effect, but I think it'll work here. Well, thank you for putting up with my state of mind right now. Like I said, I'm tired. I'm not thinking clearly. But this is due, I think, tomorrow. So I got to make sure it's done, and I'd like to have time to sit on it so that I can look at it with fresh eyes in the morning before I send it out. That's pretty cool. That's all right. Kind of wish that I see the lightning bolt as it comes down close to her hip here. It's a little too close to the edge, and I guess it's conforming with the shape too much. And I really wish that I kind of drug it out over here more, but it's so close to the crop mark. I don't think it's going to matter, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to do a little bit of rendering on Dina here because she's got this energy pop coming off of her. Now I'm turning the stabilization way down because I don't want a really sharp tip on these. I like the sharp tip on these rendering lines to be sort of in the white area. So it's not like the black tip that I want sharp. It's the white part that I'm creating, the negative shape that I'm creating that I want to have more of the sharpness to it. I can't tell you why that is. It's just something I've discovered when I've been using pens. I used to like all my lines super sharp, but what I've learned is that you need a contrast in everything, including sharp lines and dull lines. The tricky part is trying to explain why and when it works. Because sometimes I'm not always sure. It's just kind of a feeling. Dina's hair needs a little bit of details. But I'm putting all the details up towards the top here because if the light is largely coming from down here, then it's going to be darker up here. And then I should also try and thin out some of her hair. Her hairline's down along the bottom here because of the light source, right? The light source is more coming from below than above, so her lower parts of her hair here should be thinner lines. That feels a little better. See, that's borderline. I zoomed in really closely here, and then I put these in here, but now it feels, that feels a little muddy, so I'm going to get rid of those. You know, once I look back on it, or zoom out, it kind of looked muddy. Let's go with a little bit of here's another reason why I get rid of my crop thing when I'm laying my blacks, because when I drop in the black bucket, if this crop line is still showing up, even at a lower opacity, it then leaves these little white spots. And then either I or the colorist have to go in there and take it out. It's a little time consuming. All right, I think we're done with the main figures here. I might put in a little details here, just a little tiny bit more energy. A few lines like this, they say a lot. They say where the shape of things are, where there's sort of like these little explosive bits of energy on the page. Hopefully. All right, good old Trip Hammer. I'm going to create another layer for Trip Hammer. And since he's in the far background, I might even keep him on the other layer, not flatten it for the colorist. So that the colorist might want to do like a line drop or something that'll be easier. The colorist being Nick Filardi. But before I do that, I gotta draw these sort of smoke power lines coming off of Walker. All right. Now let's look at Trip Hammer. Trip Hammer is so fun. I'm going to turn the stabilization way up because he has armor. The lighting's coming from below, so I got the thicker lines up there, thinner lines down here. For his visor, I'm going to try and keep it thinner at the top, and then thicker at the bottom. And then go with thick to thin, thick to thin. And now we've got some really nice composition shapes. Like if we look at the small, you can kind of see the composition a lot better. So we've got this area is like a double arrow, both pointing towards the middle and pointing down towards Walker. The shape of the smoke is coming down to also create another V shape. Actually, yeah, let's create another layer. So we've got this nice V shape. Let's turn all these opacities down. And like everything here is just kind of pointing down towards Walker. He's a Y shape. The smoke. See, like everything is just kind of pointing down towards the middle. Even these cats here, because there's more of them at the top of their bodies. Little triangle shapes, little arrows, right? So I really like this composition. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind in the future. Okay, let's go back to him. Chip hammer. Smaller. I could do these with straight lines as well. Straight lines meaning over here there's a tool where you can like just do little lines like that. I typically end up using those when I'm doing like buildings and background stuff. And usually I do like an outline here to just give myself guidelines. Guidelines to see where the shape really is here. And a lot of this I'm just eyeballing. Another great way to do this would be to just draw one side of this and then flip it and lay it down here so that it's exactly the same. That's if you want that kind of like super perfection. I don't like perfection, like I said. Maybe I should. And you know, just because I talk about not being a perfectionist, not slaving over every line and all that stuff, don't mistake that for thinking that I view comics or my own art as being more of a product than art. You know, it's definitely art. It's all expression. But I'm closer to an impressionist than a literalist. And I think that's all I really need for Trip, for the main parts of him. I'm going to create another layer to then do my trick with. Just sort of reflections and stuff. I don't know. I'm saying that a lot today, aren't I? I don't know. Okay, now I'm going to lower the opacity on there. Let's get rid of the pencils. I'm going here, either use an eraser or a lasso tool. To get rid of the bits that I don't want. kind of worried that the top of his head will end up completely disappearing. So I'm going to make a highlight in here. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Let's see. Oops. No. I don't like that at all. Get rid of the whole thing. Let's try it again. This time I think I'm just going to do some lines here. Let's bring the stabilization way up, go smaller. Ooh. All right, now let's lower the opacity and get rid of this stuff. I don't know how much you guys can get out of these long walkthroughs, like the whole page. I think maybe in the future I should just kind of stick to specific lessons. Well, I guess it would make sense from time to time to continue to do. Shit, what did I just do? Oh. From time to time to continue to do these full page things, but I should probably do more videos specifically about individually smaller lessons that are easier to digest instead of page-long videos. Although I'm sure some of you are kind of drawing or working while this is on and I'm talking. At least that's what I do with guys like Eric Canetti. I love putting his Twitch videos on, or Nick Filardi, and just listening as I work. But they're a lot more entertaining than I am. Yeah, I was looking to put another highlight in here somehow, but I'm not feeling it. Yeah, actually that kind of works. Now he looks like he's got an eye in the middle of his head, so no. Let's take that off. Alright, I think we're just going to live with it like this. Alright, so here we are so far. So now I'm looking at it, I realize something I'm going to need to do, which is, so Dina and Retrogor are unbalanced here. I should have used, maybe I could still bring her cape out to the front. See how Dina's got this shape around her here? And there's this open space over here, so it's going to leave it kind of unbalanced, and everything else going on this cover is really balanced. So either I should move her cape so it's blowing this way, or I'll make sure when I'm doing my cityscape stuff back here that there's a shape that balances her out. But even if I put a city shape back there that's going to balance her out, it then it's still in the background, so it's not really going to be a balance. Fuck. All right, so I think I'm gonna try drawing the cape here. So let's lower her opacity. Create another layer. Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty well balanced. So let's get rid of this. Sure, everything's overlaid. Now I'm going to get rid of our cape here. I'm really glad I'm capturing this part for you guys. So you can see how you can kind of, I mean, digitally, this is just so easy. This is, again, this is one of the reasons why I'm working digitally. It's not easy as far as effort, but as far as time goes, time is the big, is the enemy. It's the big commerce, you know. When you're making comics, time is tough, man. You know, there's never enough time in the day to get shit done. So working digitally is a big help, man. It's a time is a commodity. All right, so I got these on a send layer. That's a little more balanced in her favor, but because these are thicker lines and darker and stuff. But we'll see when it comes together in colors, and also this is just because I needed that thing to balance these two off. They're going to need, just got to thin out this line a little bit. All right. Clean this up some. All right, make this brush much smaller, and now I'm going to do some rendering lines. Zoom out some so I can look at what I'm doing. That feels about right. I notice this little bump here. Sometimes you can't see it when you're zoomed in, but when you're zoomed out, these weird shapes will show up. This top line feels way too thick. Yeah, it feels better. Could use a little bit of rendering there. Just I don't have the words this morning. But there's some form and shape in here that this little line is emphasizing. I don't know how to put it into words right now. I'm sorry. Just tired. When I zoom out here, I notice like it kind of pinches down here by her goggle, and I think it needs a little bit more space. So I'm going to do that. Let's there you go. Let's see. I don't know. I think that feels better. Sometimes a change feels better, even if it's not actually doing anything. Like there's a sense that it feels better.